Bienvenidos a todos al último día de marketing. Estamos muy contentos de haber llegado hasta acá. Fueron 2 días intensos y todavía queda mucho para disfrutar a lo largo del día de hoy. De hecho, bueno, no quiero spoilear mucho, pero ya está en la agenda. Nuestra primera charla en inglés será dentro de minutos.
Buenos días a todos. Gusto en volver a encontrarlos y, como dijo Nadia, han sido 2 días y hoy será el último con premios al final. No se olviden. Nuestros sponsors: Diamond, Ecosistemas Endavo, Napsis, Practia, Baufest, Platinum, Brightest, Spark Digital, Coaction, Global, Neoris, Silver, Gestión IT, Softtest, Crowdart, Arbusta, Abstracta, ITstops. Y por supuesto entidades que nos han apoyado y nos siguen apoyando: UTN Regional Buenos Aires, Consejo Profesional de Ciencias Informáticas, Testing UI, Testing Capítulo Venezuela, Testing Bolivia, Mendoza Testing Day, Undertest y también Fundación Diagonal.
Para el día de hoy tenemos una agenda también cargada de charlas y talleres. En términos de talleres vamos a estar hablando de Backend Automation Testing y de software de videojuegos, que es algo totalmente innovador en nuestra agenda. Y bueno, a lo largo del día tendremos la apertura, ahora con nuestra primera keynote en inglés, después una seguidilla de charlas súper interesantes y al final la keynote de cierre de los caminos de la vida del tester. Al final de esa keynote están los sorteos, no se olviden de los sorteos, que hay premios muy interesantes, gift card de Amazon, muchas, exámenes de certificación de ISTQB u otros que quieran elegir, cursos de Udemy. Hay muchos premios que están muy buenos. Para eso recuerden que tienen que estar inscriptos, ¿sí? No solamente tienen que estar conectados, alcanza con que estén inscriptos. Para inscribirse van a ese link que aparece ahí abajo, argentesting.com/agenda, y van a encontrar el link de inscripción.
Y por supuesto nos pueden seguir en nuestras redes, fundamentalmente por LinkedIn, por Instagram, por Facebook, nuestro canal, y no se olviden que entrando y siendo miembros de LinkedIn también podrán estar viendo y tomando nota de las publicaciones, oportunidades de trabajo, que hay muchas, y demás.
Bien, bueno, ahora a las 9 en punto, dentro de 10 minutos, arrancamos con la primera charla. Vayan dejando los comentarios, las bienvenidas, de dónde son, quiénes nos siguen. Recuerden que esta keynote es en inglés, así que por favor las preguntas en ese idioma. Tienen ahí al costadito para dejar, para escribir, para saludar, para mandarle saludos a Kevin y demás. Así que, bueno, vamos con unas pautas publicitarias y en 10 minutos estamos de nuevo con ustedes.
I can't hear you. You're muted. Nadia, you're muted.
Oh, thank you very much, Kevin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Today is the last day of Argent testing. Before introducing our keynote, I'd like to invite you to leave your comments or questions on the live chat, and I will ask him at the end of the presentation. Now we are glad to have Kevin Harris with us. Thank you, Kevin, for accepting our invitation, and the virtual stage is yours.
Wow, thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I say here, obviously I'm at my own house. I would have loved to have come over, but we know at the moment that's not possible. And so there's a little bit of that in my talk today. So I've called it challenging times, and there's a couple of reasons for that, and we'll go into that as we get into the slides. So firstly, just a little bit about me. I am Kevin Harris. Hello. I've been in testing for more than 20 years. I've done lots of roles in that time, from tester, senior tester, test manager, but I've also been Scrum Master for a few years, and even a couple of years as a developer. So most roles in the development team I've done at one point or another. I'm currently test manager at Nationwide, which is a very large building society or bank in the UK. And if you're interested and you get to the end of this and for some reason you want to see more of me, there are some various talks and things on the internet, on YouTube, or Ministry of Test or Test Huddle, or at various other conferences. And at the bottom, that's my Twitter handle, my LinkedIn name. So please, if you do have any questions or any comments, or if you want to get in touch afterwards, then please do reach out. I'm always quite up for talking in any way at the moment, especially as I haven't actually been into my office for over a year and a half now. So any kind of social interaction is a bonus. So the reason I'm at home is because these are the most challenging times that I've ever lived through, and I think that would be the same for most people. On the screen at the moment, you'll probably recognize that is coronavirus. That is why I haven't been into my office for the last year and a half. It is a remarkable time, really. Sometimes it feels to me like it's the biggest social experiment in the world. It's very bizarre what we've had to deal with over the last 2 years. But even if we strip away the pandemic and the coronavirus, there's so much other stuff going on that's really challenging. We've obviously got the whole global environmental issues going on. If you see the news about some of this thing, it's really scary, and what it's going to be like in 50, 100 years, we don't know, but it just seems to be getting worse, and we don't seem to be doing anything about it. On top of that, of course, we have our leaders. These are, if you do not know who this man is leader of my country. This is my Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. In the last election, more people voted for this man than any other person, any other candidate. So he is my Prime Minister, and obviously I'm very proud. So all the situations that we have to deal with day to day, this is the man who is going to lead us through it. And the UK isn't alone in having leaders that maybe we don't trust as much as we'd like to. I could have done 30, 40 slides just of leaders who you wouldn't buy a used car from, let alone run your country. Here's a couple of recent ones, one current, one hopefully never current again, who make a lot of news, and a lot of negative news for a lot of negative reasons. So that's a real challenge for us if we can't actually trust our leaders to guide us through our day-to-day lives. Other things, of course, one of the things that Trump was really famous for was talking about fake news. How much of what we see and hear every day is actually real, and how much is made up? Even though Trump kept talking about fake news, when actually people analyze the things he said and the facts he came up with, more than 80% of Donald Trump's facts were not true. And that's kind of the leader of the free world, as he likes to be known. But again, we can't trust even even those kinds of leaders. It's very, very strange times, and even in IT, it's no better there. As IT gets more widespread and more complicated and complex, more and more things can go negatively wrong, seriously wrong, can challenge our day-to-day living. Even though I'm sat here in my house in England, there could be somebody in a different country on a different continent who in the next 5 minutes could steal my identity and all of my money. It's a very strange world that we live in at the moment, and very challenging. So thank God for testers. Why am I saying thank God for testers? Well, obviously we are marvelous people, but challenge is something that we are used to. Not believing everything that is put in front of us is part of our day-to-day jobs. That's what we deal with every part of our working lives is not trusting what we are shown, asking questions, challenging back. So even all in this situation where the world is not ideal, for us as testers, we should be able to see our ways through that. We should be able to challenge what's presented in front of us and move forward. So I'm going to talk about 6 ways that we can challenge back, and things that we ought to be challenging. A lot of it's going to be work related. There'll be some bits in there that aren't work related, but mostly I'm going to try and pull it back to our day-to-day working environment as well. So overall, in challenging times, I think it's everybody's duty to challenge everything around them, to not believe everything that we are told, to seek out what the truth is behind it, and to try and make things better. So very first thing that we ought to be challenging is the actual work that we do today, day to day. If we are testing on a project, that project that is presented before us, what's true about that? What's right about that? What's accurate about that? Is what we are being told actually what the customer needs? Oh, water, lovely. So first thing to do is challenge those requirements that are put in front of you. We know people can make mistakes. We know requirements can be ambiguous. We know that sometimes there'll be things missing, but so it's our job, and especially as a tester, usually the person who knows the system more than anybody else, because we use it more than anybody else, it's our job to challenge the stuff that is put in front of us, to say, actually, does that really match up to what the rest of the system is doing, the rest of the application? Is that what our customer needs? We need to be very, very vocal right from the start. Here's a reason. So in the olden days, when I first started testing, back then, everything was either V model or waterfall. And so everybody was very siloed. And now, of course, we're moving to a more agile way. And I've been doing agile for 14 years. And this is the reason that we do agile. Basically, if we have each person in their role just doing their role, each of us sees the world in a different way. And this is a way that we can visualize how each person in a team sees their view of the world. But it's not a joined up view. And I'm really worried about the beta testers and what they're seeing. But again, it's all about us ensuring that we are challenging what other people are thinking and what the work is coming across. So the very first thing that we ought to be doing is we need to be spending a lot of time in that story kickoff, sprint planning, 3 amigos, however you do it. The good point for me right now is if you're watching the slides, you'll be just watching that. It doesn't matter what I say for the next 30 seconds. All you're going to be doing is watching these 3 guys dance. If you don't recognize this is the film of the 3 amigos, which is why I put it up there. But again, doesn't matter what I'm saying at this point. But the point I'm trying to make is in that kickoff meeting, in that first occasion where you see what the requirements are, you have to be vocal. The tester has to be a vocal part of that meeting. It's not like when I first started, where you were just told what you'd be doing and you just sat there in silence and made notes, or even you weren't even told that, you were just given the completed code later on to test. Now you have to be there right from the start. You have to be vocal and you have to be challenging the requirements that are being brought to you and the people in that meeting. Second part of the work is the process. So again, when I first started, process wasn't a thing. You just kind of got on with it. And the interesting thing about the way we work now is the process, I would say, is as important as the actual work. How we do things is as important as the things that we do. The reason for that is if you're working in a poor way, then that's going to lead to delays. It's going to lead to a cost, and it's also going to lead to a poorer quality product. And with all those things in place, that could actually lead to the end of your company. If you are like a startup who is just starting out, you can't afford for those things to occur. So you have to ensure that you are doing it right every time. And more than that, you have to be improving how you do it every time. So it's really important, the way we work now, to look at how we can improve how we work day to day. So again, if you're being vocal at the kickoff, you also need to be vocal in the retrospectives. It should be a safe place for people to talk about what's gone on for the last iteration, whether that's 2 weeks or however you do it. But you need to be sure that as the tester in that room, you are saying what went well, what went badly, and what things we can improve next time. Because a lot of your time should be spent saying, what can we do to make this better next time round? So look at ways to change it. Look at experimentation. So don't be afraid to experiment. This is a bit extreme, so I'm not expecting this in most development teams. If you like old films, this is the 1931 Frankenstein film from Universal. But you have to be able to experiment in your teams. Try things new to your team. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be in place for weeks. It could be something you just try for a couple of days or just one sprint. But you must not be afraid to experiment, because the only way of getting better is to try new ways of working. So every time you do need to try and experiment, come up with some new ways of working every sprint, every iteration, out of every retrospective. Right, the next section is the largest section, and it's kind of a very interesting section, at least for me, which is about challenging the way that you think. And I do mean you. I don't mean your team. I mean you. And I'll tell you why as soon as I've had another drink. So basically, we lie to ourselves constantly, all of the time. We get things wrong, even if we think we are right. The facts in our head, the memories in our head, the beliefs, our own ability, we lie to ourselves about that all of the time. So the next bit is going to be a bit of a book report. I hope that's okay. So I've been reading a book. I do occasionally read a book. Actually, you can see I'm in the library, so you would expect me to be able to read a book. And the book is this one. It is on the screen, The Invisible Gorilla. And they talk about the way that we fool ourselves. And I think that's really important for us as testers, is to not just challenge the things around us, but challenge our own mindset and how we think about things, because we do get it wrong. And we do get it wrong a lot, but we don't realize we're getting it wrong. So we have to have things in place to look at our decision-making process and think about how we can actually analyze it and change it if we need to. So in The Invisible Gorilla, they talk about 6 different, they call them illusions, the ways that we kind of fool ourselves in our day-to-day lives. So I'm just going to briefly just go over the 6 illusions that they talk about. The first one is the illusion of attention, also known as inattentional blindness or selective attention. This one is one of those things that really is important for us as testers. It's that ability for us to focus on one thing, but to focus so much on that one thing that we miss all the other things around us, which can happen. It can happen with us as testers. It can happen with developers with their code. It can happen with anybody in a team. The example that I've got here is on the screen. You can see a clip from a film that the writers of the book, The Invisible Gorilla, did a while back. It's quite famous. You can find it on the internet, various versions of it. But this was an experiment to show people this film, and the people who were watching the film were told to count the number of passes the basketball players in white make. So that was their instruction. It's like a minute-long video. Count the number of passes that the players in white make. And at the end of the film, that you can see there, the people who were watching the film were asked how many passes there were, and most of them got it right. And then they were asked, "Did you see the gorilla?" Which might seem like a really strange question, because from this little frame that we've got here, that gorilla is pretty damn obvious. I mean, he's very large. He's in the middle. He is the focus of the frame as we can see it here. The interesting thing is that more than 50% of the people, when they were asked if they'd seen the gorilla, said, "What gorilla?" More than half of the people did not see that man in the gorilla suit in this video. And he is very obvious. So he's not there at the start. He walks on, he looks at the camera, as you can see there, and then he walks off the other side. He's on there for a good few seconds. He is incredibly obvious, but more than 50% of the people watching the film had no recollection of seeing the gorilla. And that's kind of like our jobs day to day. If we concentrate too much on one area, what are we missing? What are we not looking at? What are we not aware of? It's worth reading the book on this. There's a very interesting chapter on it, and you will be really scared when you read about what they do with airline simulators, where they do something similar and the pilots miss an entire aircraft. It is quite scary. So that's the first way that we kind of fool ourselves. The second one is called the illusion of memory, which is also known as the Mandela effect. The reason they call it the Mandela effect is because there was a little bit of research that went on 20 odd years ago, where a researcher asked various people if they could remember where they were when Nelson Mandela had died. And a lot of people could remember exactly where they were, who they were with, time of day, what they were doing when he had died. The interesting thing there is they actually did the research while he was still alive. So Nelson Mandela wasn't dead, but lots of people actually could remember where they were when he had died, even though he hadn't died. Our memory fools us. I do have a personal example of that, and yes, it has to do with mashed potato. All good stories should have mashed potato in them at some point. So I have children. I have a couple of children. The first one, when she was born, we used to do lots of cooking. We used to do big portions, and then we used to freeze portions of it and then heat it up later on. So we'd done that with mashed potato, made a big saucepan of mashed potato, put it into portions, put it in the freezer. And then one day I was in charge of getting the meal together. So I got a portion of mashed potato out, put it on the plate, heat it up, put it on the plate, got some beef sauce of some kind, put that on the plate as well, pass that to my daughter. And she had one spoonful, and then she refused to eat it, which was quite frustrating because this was her main meal, but she just would not eat it. So me and my partner, who was there as well, we tried to persuade her for like 10-20 minutes to eat this meal, and she would not eat it. So in the end, of course, we got the spoon, and we were showing her how tasty it was. At that point, we found out it wasn't mashed potato. It was butter icing that we'd put aside for a cake. And we'd heated up butter icing, put it on the plate with a meat sauce, which is why she wouldn't eat it. What's that got to do with the illusion of memory, you might ask? It's not as if I'd forgotten which was which. We just hadn't labeled it. The problem was when my partner told that story to somebody else and I was listening, She had done all the preparation, not me, but her. But that's not how I remember it. Even more interesting, when she was telling somebody else, in her version of the story, I wasn't even there. She did not actually remember me being in the room when we had this very long, very memorable I say confrontation with our daughter. I remember her being there. I remember me doing it. She does not remember me being there at all. Same situation, equally important for both of us to remember it, and we both memorized it differently. So that's really interesting, the fact that our own memory, we know, is actually not necessarily correct. If you look on Wikipedia for this kind of issue, it's quite interesting. There's about 30 different ways they list that you can actually subvert your own memory. In our case, I think it was the constant retelling of the same story to multiple people. We embellish it, we add bits, we take bits away, so that the actual story becomes a story and not a memory anymore. But our own memory fools us. Next one is the illusion of confidence. So basically, we all think we're better than we are, basically, is it. We all think we can do more things than we can, or we'll do it better than maybe we've done it in the past. So even if the data says you are this good, we all think we're better, at least in the things we care about. So they did some research in New York with a chess league with regular players. So the regular players, they played at least once a month, and their rating was based on their results. So the rating was completely accurate based on how they were doing. But 3/4 of the people who were checked on this thought their rating was too low, thought they were better than their rating was showing, even though their rating was entirely accurate and based on their own performance and the performance of everybody else. So it wasn't being faked, it was completely correct, but 3/4 of the people thought it was too low. Of the others, about 20% thought it was about right, and only 3 or 4% thought their rating was too high. We all have an overinflated version of how good we are at things, not just at chess, but how good we are maybe at work, how good our testing is, how good the code is. We all have that assumption that we are better than maybe we actually are. And we all like to think that we know more than we actually do. There are some subjects that we think, oh yes, we know all about that, and then you kind of dig into it, and actually maybe you don't know that much about it after all. Maybe you know just the top layer. One example of this is they were asking all the industry experts, all the geneticists, about how many genes they thought there were in the human genome. And this was only like 20 years ago, and the geneticists estimated between 80,000 and 100,000. And these were the experts. These were the people who worked with this day in, day out. And the largest estimate, I think, was about 370,000. I mean, they still don't know exactly how many it is, but now it's between 20 and 25,000. So everybody, all the most knowledgeable people on the subject, all got it wrong. All thought their knowledge was better than it was. It's really interesting. So how can that apply to us in our day-to-day work? So this is when something like a 5 whys comes into play. So I don't know if you do a 5 whys. So basically, it's if something goes wrong, if you have an issue, if you have something you need to investigate, first of all, you ask, why did it happen? And the thing is, at that stage, everybody thinks they know. Everybody will have a reason why it happened. Oh, it happened because of this person did that, or this happened, or this environment. But then you dig down, so why did that person do that? Why isn't the process picking that up? Why is that environment not correct? And you keep going down and down and down, and you strip off those layers of knowledge that maybe aren't accurate, and you get down to the real reason why something's happened. So if you're not using a 5 whys at the moment, it's something that's certainly worth looking into. The next is the illusion of cause. This one is quite fascinating, especially with the example I'm going to give, especially in the world that we live at the moment. So the illusion of cause is basically if 2 things happen, it's thinking that one thing happens because of the other thing, just because they happen at the same time, or one happens after the other one, even if they're completely unrelated. you see two graphs, and if they look similar, you say, okay, one is caused by the other. And that can have catastrophic outcomes, as we see at the moment. So the example I've got is about the MMR vaccine, which is the vaccine against measles. So there was a British researcher, yes, British again, who in the 1990s noticed there was a correlation between toddlers getting the vaccine and then toddlers later on, when they were tested for autism, showing signs of autism. So basically, vaccination 6 months later, tested as autistic, and he published a paper. And actually, a lot of the anti-vaccination stuff that we see at the moment across the world in lots of countries is based on the outcome of this report. So a lot of people stopped vaccinating, stopped agreeing to do the MMR vaccine at that point, even though subsequently it's been shown to be a completely harmless vaccine and will save millions of lives, and is definitely the right thing to give your children if you're thinking about it. But the problem was he'd looked for cause where there wasn't cause. So what happens is, in the UK, everybody gets that vaccine at about 1 year old. And at 1 year old, nobody has autism. The reason that nobody has autism is because there's no test for autism at that age. The test for autism only works at about 18 months. So people were then having the test for autism later, and it was always 6 months after the vaccine, because that's when the two things occurred. The problem was, if a child hadn't had the vaccine, the chances of autism were exactly the same. The vaccine had no difference to it whatsoever. It happened always 6 months beforehand, but there was no causal relationship between the autism and the vaccine. But this research doctor published this paper. Lots of people picked it up, went on the media, and lots of people stopped vaccinating their children because of it. And actually, because of that, measles in some areas has gone up, and children have actually died from measles because of this report that was completely debunked. It was absolutely inaccurate, and the doctor was struck off. He's no longer allowed to do any kind of medicine or research because it was absolutely the wrong thing. So people are dying because they refuse to vaccine, and this is the kind of story that leads to that kind of anti-vaccination protest in some cases. So we have to be very careful in testing about, if something happens, why did it happen? So if we're raising a bug, we always have to be really clear as to why that bug occurred. And if we have 30 steps beforehand, do we know which were the ones that actually caused it? And in some cases, it might not be none of those steps. I had one bug I found once that was actually only occurred on a Friday afternoon. Bizarrely enough, that's a different story. But anything I'd done up to that point was completely irrelevant. It was only whether I did it on a Friday afternoon. The last one is about the delusion of potential. Another way that we fool ourselves. We all think that things can be better than they are, or we can improve things even if there's actually no way of improving things. It's known as the Mozart effect because of another piece of research. Again, one research laboratory came up with this thing that said if you played Mozart to your unborn child, then it would increase that unborn child's IQ. And of course, lots of other research institutes picked that up and tried running it, and none of them could redo that. None of them showed any results that showed that was true at all. But it was picked up in the media, got onto the news, and within 5 years, baby Einstein, I don't know if you're aware of baby Einstein in Argentina, but it was such a global phenomenon. It was making £200 million a year just by producing CDs of Mozart and similar musics to play to your unborn child. But again, absolutely spurious research, nothing behind it. But people want to think they can improve things, even if maybe that's not possible. Here are 5 facts. I'll let you have a quick read through of those while I have another drink of water. Right, so I want you to have a look at those facts and think about how many of those you believe and how many you think are not true. You can see when they did the research for most of these, more people than not thought that they were true, all of these. And of course, the thing is that none of these are true. None of these facts on this page are facts. They are all from bad research, research that is completely made up. And in one or two cases, this is from advertising. But none of these facts on this page are true, but they are in the public consciousness. People believe these things are true because they've heard them so often, and they want to believe that they can do more and be better and improve by ways that maybe, when you really sit back and think about it, are not that logical. But yes, so as you can see, more people think these things are true than not, but none of them are. So that's the book report over with. So the next thing you want to challenge is you want to challenge your colleagues, the people around you, the people you work with every day. And we've just seen that we can't even trust ourselves in the things that we think, the things that we say, the things that we remember. So similarly, why would you trust your colleagues? Obviously, you trust them to some extent because you work with them, you know what they're like, but they don't know everything. And they're not right all of the time, and they will be lying to themselves in the same way that we do. So we shouldn't be afraid to challenge those people around us in our team. Obviously, do it in a nice way. Don't walk up to them and poke your finger into their chest and say, "Why are you doing this? I don't understand it." But you want to find ways of challenging their decisions and the thought processes and being a part of it and understanding it. So you need to be able to challenge the people in your team. So it could be with a developer. Why have you coded it that way? Is that going to be useful later on for if we want to maintain it? Am I going to be able to test it? Is there a better way of coding it? Can I see your unit tests? Because that's going to help me do my side of my testing better if I can see what you've done on the unit test side of it. So you want to challenge them. You want them to show you what they've done, and you want to hear about their thought processes. If you're doing kind of V model or waterfall, that's not really part of the process. The good thing about Agile is Agile lets you kind of do those bits and pieces as you go along. So we have all of these things that you expect to have in a mature Agile team. You expect pair programming so that two people can see that code going in and challenge each other. Code reviews, again, similarly, why have you coded that way? Could you have done it better? Why haven't you followed this best practice? Test reviews and test pair programming are absolutely things that we ought to be doing more of. If you look into it, mob testing is also really good, because all of these things are saying you need to have more than one pair of eyes on every single stage of the work. We know that people make mistakes. We know that people miss things. We know that people think about things in different ways. So we can't have one person at any stage of the process, any stage of the development process, being the only person to either make a decision or analyze something or look at the code or do the testing. You need multiple eyes at every stage to reduce risk, get a better quality product, and get a product out there faster, because it really does. But you have to communicate. Communication and collaboration is so important. So challenge the members of the team, ask to see what they're doing, ask to sit with them and for them to show you. It's the best thing I used to do as a tester. Is I didn't want to see things when it was like handed over the fence. I wanted to sit with the developer, sat next to him when he was on his machine, and got him to talk through what he was doing or she was doing. So you need to have that level of collaboration and work together. But it's not just your teammates. You also need to challenge the leaders in your organization. Now, that could be your line manager, the person in charge of the project, head of department, or even the CEO of your company. You need to be able to challenge those people in a position of authority. It is vitally important for any presentation at any conference that there is a picture of a kitten somewhere in the presentation. So this is today's kitten. So everybody in a position of authority in an organization must be available to be challenged by anyone within that organization. It is incredibly important. I think the worst thing is to hear somebody, well, just get on and do it, or do it because I said so. You need to be able to challenge that decision. There are reasons for that. The first one is, as we've seen before, how do you know it's the right decision? How do you know that your leader hasn't made a mistake? Maybe it's an area that you know more about that area than the leader or the person making the decision does. So you have a right to then to challenge it. Is that the right thing? Have you thought about this? But also, in order for you to do your job properly, you need to be able to understand the decisions that are being made, especially if they affect you and the work you do. So you need to have that opportunity to say, why are we doing it that way? Can you explain it to me? So the leaders in an organization must be available to be challenged. They must be, and they must leave a safe environment for that to happen. So of course that works both ways. If you lead a team in some format or a department, or if you're the head of a company, you need to ensure that people can challenge you. It's incredibly important. For the similar reasons, how do you know you are making the right choice, the right decision? Do you know if you've got all the right feedback? You need to ensure that your team can come to you and challenge you. Again, not in a negative way, but to ensure that they understand your point of view, you understand their point of view. But you need to leave that safe environment, that psychological safety for people to come to you and question your decisions. Because if people are questioning your decisions, that either means you've made the wrong decision or you haven't explained your decision in such a format that people will understand it and agree with it. And you need to get people on board. And if people are on board, they will follow you better than if you are just telling them what to do. So you do need to leave yourself open to be challenged. You should never turn around and say, just do it because I said so, or it's my decision, not yours. You need to leave that open and have that opportunity for people to challenge what you are saying. Last section is about challenging yourself. And that's not just work, that's you yourself in every aspect. It's something I've been trying to do on and off throughout my entire life and career, because and I think it's more important than ever at the moment, with the way that the world is. Over in the UK, I don't know if it's the same for you, but we're under some form of lockdown pretty much all of the time for the last 2 years. As I said, I haven't been in my office since March last year. So you have to think about ways to challenge yourself, to help yourself day to day, to push yourself further, to kind of go out of your comfort zone, to learn more, to kind of be better, try new things. So don't be afraid to challenge yourself. I've got a couple of examples. The first one is very much work related, and it's about how you can challenge yourself to be better at your job. Because there are lots of things that we can do. My first 5 or 6 years of testing, I didn't realize that there was a social side to testing. I didn't know there was more information. Everything I learned, I kind of learned from myself and my team around me in my workplace. I didn't know there were places you could go to get information to do things better. So I wasn't challenging myself to do anything more than what I had to do day to day, and that isn't good enough. And the good thing here is that obviously you've already taken major steps. You're at a conference, and I'm sad that we are not all in a building together so we can discuss any of these things later or meet up in the bar. That's usually my preference for conferences. It's half of it is about the talk and half of it is about the talking afterwards. But so do conferences, keep doing this kind of things, keep trying to find new information. Usually improvements in a work environment are brought in from the outside. So if you want to improve things or come up with fresh ideas, read more books, look at blogs, go on Twitter. There's a good couple of hundred testers who regularly tweet on Twitter and will get you information and new ideas. Ministry of Test is a great way of getting information. They have a huge storage of talks and documents and things if you're interested in that kind of things, or online learning. So push yourself a bit more, try a bit more, try and learn something more, and push the boundaries of what you know about your role, whatever your role is. So a bit more personal for me, I got challenged a few years ago to do something that I had never done before. And I'm doing it now. You'll be pleased to hear. So I had never actually done a talk before, up to about 5 years ago. My line manager at the time challenged me and said, right, I think you can do this. But I'd had no kind of thoughts for actually standing up in front of a group of 100 people, or in this case, I think it was about 500 people, and doing a talk. It just seemed like the most bizarre thing. And it was certainly very much outside of my comfort zone. But I applied anyway, and I got in, and I ended up doing a talk. My very first talk was in front of 200 people. And I do it to kind of push myself, to challenge myself, to kind of remove myself from that comfort zone. It's a very interesting way of doing it. I mean, obviously there's adrenaline and anxiety when you're actually doing any kind of presentation. I won't even tell you about the number of toilet trips I had to do before I gave the the talk today. But I'm challenging myself, and I'm getting more out of it, and I have a more positive view of myself if I challenge myself in these ways. And right now, things like mental health is so important, and again, something that we don't talk about enough. But it's something that we can improve by doing things and challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves a bit more. If you're under lockdown, what happens is the walls get closer and closer, and you do less and less. So you have to find ways of challenging yourself to kind of get out there and try new things. Just a quick couple of other things I've done over the last few years. The challenges can be both physical and mental. So on the left, physical challenges. We have the top left one is something we call the 3 peaks, which in the UK is you climb the tallest mountain in Scotland, the tallest mountain in Wales, and the tallest mountain in England, all within one day. So that was after us just climbing the highest mountain in Wales. That was our 3rd one, and we did that in less than a day. So that was quite a challenge, and it was quite a push for me to kind of be able to do that. Lockdown has obviously presented issues. I haven't gone to the office, as I said, for a year and a half. So I don't drive that hour or two that I was doing. So actually at lunchtime, I started running. I'd never done that before. I am, as you can see, not the the fittest man in the world, but actually it was something I could do, that I could, even on lockdown, I could do that, and I could challenge myself to do something new. And it worked really well. So I was actually got to the stage where I was running every lunchtime, and I was doing 20-25 miles a week, running from a start when I started, but I hadn't run basically since school, and I hadn't wanted to. But again, it was a challenge, and I'm now looking to try and do a marathon in the next year or so. Again, it's challenging myself to try something new, to push myself a little bit further. And the rewards you get out of the back of it are usually make everything worthwhile, even the amount of pain you have to go through for some of these things. On the top right, you're going to wonder what on earth is going on there. So I got challenged by one of the conferences I go to do a film. So basically, this is me acting in a film. You can find it on YouTube. But I acted in it, and I wrote a script. Again, something I'd never done before, but something somebody suggested, why don't you try that? And being challenged in that way and challenging yourself, I think is very important. So I advise you all to find some way of challenging yourself, of getting out there. If you've never talked at a conference before, put a submission in. Think about something that you can talk about, because we all have unique stories. We all have our unique lives that nobody else can talk about but us. So there's always something for you to talk about that somebody else will not have heard. So don't be afraid to kind of get out there and try something new. And it doesn't have to be in front of people. It can be off on your own. You can go out for a run. You can find a new hobby, but try and challenge yourself every now and then, and try and find some new way of looking at the world. So that's it. Just to wrap up, I think as testers, because our entire careers basically are about challenging ideas, people, work. Even in these times, I think actually I'd rather be a tester living in this world than doing most other jobs. I think we have that mental baggage to be able to survive and thrive. So keep testing, keep challenging, and I'm interested to see if you have any questions for me. If you do want to get in contact, please do reach out. LinkedIn and Twitter are ways to contact me. But if you find other ways, I'm very willing to have any kind of conversation and respond to any questions. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. I really enjoyed your presentation. There are a lot of comments, not too many questions, but a lot of comments talking about the funny of your presentation, your pictures, and the way you transmit the things. I'd like to see the video that you mentioned in one of the last slides.
Which one was that? I can't even remember. I've got a blank already.
I will ask you this one.
Yes.
Is it considerable to think that many of the processes in testing can be improved by artificial intelligence, making this process easier for the tester, or can it be replaced and focus more on automation developments?
It's a very interesting question. So I've looked a bit at the AI side of it. I did work in a research team before my recent move. So we were looking at various kinds of machine learning and AI, and it is a fascinating way to go. But I don't think it can ever replace anything that we do day to day. Automation is really important and is vitally important for us as testers. But the manual side and the exploratory side is as important. And I think as far as AI can go and can take us, that human interaction, I think, will be required for at least as long as I'm testing. Let's put it that way. So there are always new tools, new ways of working, and new improvements. I mean, that's been the fascinating thing for me in 20 years of testing. Is it's always got different. It's always improved. There's always been something interesting, some new way of working, some tool that will help us. But that doesn't stop the need for having that tester there with the thoughts and the intelligence and the experience to be able to do what the AI still can't do.
Good, thank you. I challenge the audience to ask questions or comments.
Okay.
Then there are many comments. Thank you so much.
You.
Excellent talk. But I think there are no more questions. So thank you very much.
I can go have
Everything was
down.
Clear. That's why.
Yeah. And as I said, if you do find that you've got a question later, do reach out. Do send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I will respond to every question or even every comment. But yeah, that's absolutely fine if you want to do that later.
Thanks. Excellent presentation, Master Kevin. Very interesting. There is a blog where you can consult more.
There was a blog. I haven't been up to date on my blogging recently, I have to say. So I need to get that back up and running. I will I will let you know when I do that.
This one. Do you think no technical people can be effective at testing?
It depends what you mean by technical. So I've employed people before with no technical background. And for me, it's about how people think. So actually, the experience of testing and all the skills we learn as testers is very important and can be picked up. But actually, sometimes there's a spark there. So the very first person I ever interviewed for a testing role, I had a set of questions and he got every single question wrong. He really did get every question wrong, but I hired him anyway because of the way that he was thinking. It wasn't because he knew how all these things happen, but he was thinking about things differently and in a really interesting way. So you don't have to be technical. I don't think you ought to only have testers who can automate. I think there's equal room for exploratory testers who can put their intelligence to finding new ways of going through an application. So I don't think you need to be overly technical. You need to have some technical ability, obviously, because usually we're testing applications and websites and all that kind of thing. But you certainly shouldn't need to be able to automate. And I used to make a comment in my first 10 years of testing that I was usually the least technical person in the team, and that's always been the case. I don't have an issue with people not being the most technical, but I like people who think differently and think in creative ways.
I think this is the most important. I agree. Very clear explanation. Thank you. I will start challenge everything, including myself. Greetings and congratulations from Caracas, Venezuela.
Thank you. Can I just say, it is my biggest disappointment is the fact that I can't be there in person, because the one continent I've never been to is South America, and I would just have loved to have come. So maybe in the future, if we have the opportunity, I'd love to come over and be a part of it in person.
Sure. Consider the United States power in testing processes, and what is your recommendation for people who want to start this process?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question. If you're talking about kind of the thought leaders in agile testing, then a lot of them are Americans, I would say. Not all of them, but you've got people like Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory and Michael Bolton, who are, I would say, thought leaders still, and I would certainly recommend following them on Twitter and reading Janet and Lisa's books. And there's a lot of good information there. There's a lot of good people there, but there are people all over the world who are very influential now. And the social media side of it and Twitter means it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, Europe, South America, Asia. It really does not matter where you are. You could have a voice wherever you are in the world now, and I think that's really important. So don't be afraid to get onto social media. Don't be afraid to actually talk to those people. So even the people like Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory are very open for you to send them a message, and we'll start a conversation. So if you're interested in the thought leaders, the thing I found about the testing community worldwide is everybody is really open and very willing to have conversation. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. You can usually start a conversation with anybody worldwide, and they'll very happily interact with you. So it shouldn't, the global side of it shouldn't matter anymore.
Good. And the last one, I think. Thank you, Kevin. Are there any tips to manage all the activities for testers during a sprint, including being aware of new tools in the market and how to implement them?
Yes. So it needs agreement, but in the best teams I've worked with, they give you like slack time. So when you go into a sprint, you only take enough work for like 70% of that sprint. And you're allowed to spend the rest of the time doing things to kind of help improve the process. So for all these things, all these tools, if they are going to help the process, then the long-term view is they're going to make things quicker in the future. So you should be able to spend time on them. Also, the last two companies I've worked with have allowed people a period of time, like about a day a month, half a day a month, for their own self-learning. So as long as you're doing something to kind of advance the way you think and your career, and it might help the team or it might not, but you're allowed to do your own learning in your own time and find the things that you want to pursue. So that's definitely something that you can do and you should be doing. But for the day-to-day stuff, if it's going to improve the process and improve the quality of your work, then that should be brought into how you work in every kind of sprint or whatever variation you're using.
Okay, that's it. Thank you again very much. I really enjoyed your presentation, and thank you for accepting the invitation, Kevin.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.